Hey there, Cap. You're looking good. The finale of Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Yeah, I'm going to call it that. It's what the ending called it, and it's earned. Well earned. And actually, I want to be very clear about something here in terms of how I read this overall thing. When I say it's earned, I don't want it to sound like Sam earned the right to be Captain America or earn the shield. He always had that. What he needed for his own journey was to accept that he was worthy of it, or at least that he was worthy of trying to be able to hold up that legacy, and that he always had been. So when I say I earned it, I mean the show overall earned that title. Sam himself, he had the right and earned it to be Captain America immediately. He just wasn't ready. And that's a personal character journey that I can absolutely get behind. To me, there's something really engaging about a character actively, whether knowingly or through the course of something that they are doing, coming to terms and accepting a responsibility that they already had or already had the opportunity to have and didn't feel ready for, or maybe actually flat out weren't ready for it. I would argue Sam was. But as a general arc for a character, I like that. Because there's a presumption oftentimes in fiction that unless the title or power or rank or whatever was attained through duplicitous means, barring that, there's an assumption that if somebody has a title or a position of power, that they, A, deserve to be there, and B, they understand that and they believe that. And that's not always the case. And I think it's really interesting to delve into the times when maybe that isn't the case a little bit. Now, thematically, I'm completely down for this episode. I think how it resolved its arcs was solid to great in all cases. And even some of the ones that I was a little iffy about, I'm like, you didn't totally drop the ball. I need to stew on some of this a little bit to figure out my exact feelings, but nothing made me go, oh. Which, well, no, one thing. Sharon Carter being revealed as the power broker made me go, ugh, a little bit. Not because it's bad or I don't buy it or she doesn't play it well. She does. It's just that. Was there anyone who didn't call that? That was super obvious. And it's fine. I'm just kind of thinking that it might have done the show good to reveal that earlier, because holding it off for as long as they did, it makes it feel like the show thinks they pulled the wool over our eyes. Did anybody not call that? I mean, unless you just flat out weren't speculating. I mean, I don't know. But other than that, everything felt well pulled together in terms of the characters' arcs and their landing and where they end up and the significance and relevance given to that. If I was going to land a criticism, it would be on the fact that this is a super action-heavy finale, which I expected it would be, but for starters, I don't love how much of it takes place in really dark lighting. And I also feel like these fights were a bit more cut heavy, or at least they felt that way. Maybe it's just in combination with how dark it is. It makes it stand out more to me that it feels like they are trying to obscure the fight rather than show off the fight. And maybe if I did a comparison to the fights that take place in the day, I would find that they're both just as cut heavy in terms of styling, but just setting it in darkness in nighttime, if I can't always clearly see it, or if it feels like I'm having to focus more than I might otherwise just to understand what the heck's going on, I'm really starting to lean towards the general idea that fights in the dark or fights at night are rarely worth it. I mean, at their worst, you end up with stuff like Iron Fist and the tail end of the Defenders series from those Netflix shows. And this is hardly the worst, but I did feel less engaged by this fight, just by these fights, just by the fact that they were in the dark. And also, the outcomes were pretty much predetermined, and we lingered a little bit too much on some fights that, honestly, I didn't have a lot of personal investment in. Like Sam versus Batroc, again, which I was fine with, but I thought that went on a little bit longer than I needed to. The chase with Sam and the helicopter, that was, again, fine, but it went on longer than I think I had any use for it. And, like, maybe this is just me. Maybe other people really got into the action sequences, but, like, for me, what I connected with the show wasn't really the action. That's not to say the action wasn't very good at times. I would put the fight on the top of the trucks, episode 2, I think, as the high point of the action scenes, but there were some other good ones. The fight with the Wakandan warriors, I mean, that was solid. So, like, there is good stuff here, but it was never what I was most engaged with. I was most engaged with the thematics and with the characters. And when the action scenes go on too long, I feel like the characters and the theming are taking a back seat for something that I'm less interested in. But again, that's me, and that's how I'm prioritizing these elements. Maybe the action scenes landed for people who are more here to enjoy those in the first place. And that's fine. It's not necessarily a weakness of the show or of the finale. It's just one of the things that made me enjoy it a little bit less than I might have otherwise. I'm trying to think. I've got a lot to cover. Okay, I'm gonna start going through characters, I think. So Sharon, I've already talked about. Like, in terms of what they actually did, it's fine. They shouldn't have played it. They shouldn't have waited this long to reveal it, is my opinion. And then Bucky seems to have done a lot to just come to some kind of peace about himself, which is nice. And then that's well affirmed at the end when he finally tells his friend that he killed his son. And you can see how hard that is for him to say it and how hard it is for his friend to hear it. And that felt well earned. And at this point, his banter and his integration into Sam's life and with Sam's family and community that we see towards the end, that feels just energizing and wonderful to see. It's the kind of thing that I hope when these characters are reintegrated back into the films again, that is played up and not just a feature of the TV show. I mean, I expect their banter will still be there, but like how their lives are intermingled. I hope that becomes a bit of a plot point or something at a future, or at least gets some emphasis. Sam himself, as I said, watching him embrace this mantle, I think I like that they went with the suit that is fairly comic accurate to when Sam Wilson was Captain America in the comics. And I as on the nose as it is, I actually really enjoyed moments like him saving that helicopter pilot and then the people on the bridge just applauding and cheering him, or a guy going, "That's the Falcon," another guy going, "No, that's Captain America." Like, is that a little on the nose? Is that, maybe being a little too direct? If you were to say that it was, I wouldn't necessarily say that you're wrong, but given how core these elements have been, I would say between that and his speech at the end, which, is caught on film and is highly viewed and all of that, which again, like, it's a little contrived, it's a little on the nose, but honestly, I didn't care. Sometimes the core message of something is so central that it's worth being a little more blunt just to be sure that nobody missed the message. And that's not necessarily putting a value on this message is more important than this message, but sometimes, especially in a piece of entertainment aimed at a mainstream audience, and to have people who may have come to the show either not expecting or not looking for socially conscious themes, if they've stuck through to the finale, you really want to be sure that there is no possible excuse they can give for missing that this was the point. I'm not saying you have to do that, but I have no problem with a show like this choosing to do that. To lay it out bare and be like, look, Here is what it is. Here is what we are saying. You do not get the wiggle room to say, no, the show wasn't really about this, because we're telling you. We are telling you flat out this is what the show is about. And again, if you want to say that that's a little forced, you're not wrong, but again, I don't care. And I feel like it works in this case. It doesn't always work. That can still be done poorly. I mean, you can see my review on the Doctor Who episode Orphan 55 for an example of like when that does not work. But it absolutely can, and I think it does in this case. And I think Sam's whole interaction with the GRC and with that senator who we've seen repeatedly especially, that I was nice to see things laid out that clearly, and that it was not just about bringing, you know, some amount of privilege of being white to the forefront, which is an element as well, but like just speaking to power and saying, you get to decide on the lives of people that you have never understood and you have never bothered to try and understand. And that is wrong. And he's right. And the senator wasn't wrong when he said it's complicated. And Sam even acknowledges that. He's like, no, I know that. But you are refusing to understand anyone's point of view but your own. And given your position of power and privilege, you are so out of touch with the impact of what you are doing. And it does kind of give a benefit of the doubt a little bit, because I think it might have diluted the message to have it come across like that senator was willfully deciding, I don't care what happens to people of lower social or political or financial standing than me. And I think that might have been a little too harsh. So I like that the way they chose to thread that needle was them going, like, look, you've never had to think about what their lives are like. You have chosen not to do that, not necessarily because you decided flat out, I don't care, but you have the privilege to not have to think about it. But if you're going to make decisions that impact all these other people's lives, you have to think about that. You need to set your privilege aside and really look at the lives that you are going to be affecting. And I think speaking that truth to power was a wonderful thing to see. And like the moment in the episode that choked me up was seeing Isaiah watch Sam on the TV and seeing him get choked up. And I'm like, oh God, that was wonderful. And Isaiah's great too. And I love their interaction later so that there's still some nuance to that. And because if it had just been Isaiah saw him on TV and did that face, it could have been interpreted as, oh, he totally believes 100% in what Sam's doing. And having their interaction, having him still be a little grouchy, still be a little like, look, what you're doing is important. You're no Malcolm X, you're no Martin Luther King Jr., you're no Mandela. And like, yeah, it makes him feel real. Like, he's not going to suddenly drop all of his cynicism of his decades worth of horrible life experience because of this one thing that is good that has happened that he's gotten to see. But that thing still has value as well. And again, it felt like it threaded that needle and balanced that really, really well. Carli, okay, so I'm still a little mixed on Carli and the Flag Smashers. I don't love it the way I love a lot of the other stuff going on with a lot of the other characters, but I don't think they completely dropped the ball on it, because I had a lot of concerns, especially after, I think it was episode 4. I had a lot of concerns about how they were going to handle that. But they never let her decisions dilute the importance of what it was she was trying to accomplish. So that's good as a starting thing. And I think I'm still going back and forth on it, but I think it helped a little bit that her cohorts were starting to doubt what she was doing when she said, like, look, we'll just kill the hostages. And they're like, wait a minute, because, you know, they're here for the message, but that delivery method is starting to become something they didn't sign on for. And I think that also is important for Carli because it does speak to how radicalization pushes things to an extreme. Because when you truly believe that there is no other way to accomplish what it is you want to accomplish, that this is the only way, you are going to dig your heels in on that. And it probably would have rang pretty false if she had gotten talked down and, just sort of talked into surrendering. Because, no, for how far she's come and for the degree to which she believes that other methods will not work, no, she's gonna dig in her heels on that. And she is gonna push things farther when the only options are take it more extreme or give up. She's not gonna give up. It's not an option to her. And that does speak to radicalization mentality of any cause. You have to believe that no other tactics would work. Otherwise, you could never justify the things that you are doing or are preparing to do. So I feel like they got that mentality pretty good with her. And I think they managed to do that without having her taint the overall goals or messages that the Flag Smashers were meant to embody of speaking for the underserved and ignored and people who it has just been decided you don't matter as much. So I feel like they balanced that fairly well. I do need to think on a little bit hard to sort of completely parse it. And again, I don't love it. But that was what I was afraid they were going to screw up, and I don't think they did. I'm of the opinion that they did not completely screw that up. And between having her go to that edge, but not all of her followers seeming prepared to go with her, helped in this specific case. So that went pretty well. John Walker. So here's the thing about John Walker. It's wrong that he now gets to be U.S. agent pretty much right off. And it is effectively a sideways move. It's not really a demotion. He doesn't get the title of Captain America, but he's got a very similar costume, and he's going to get the same privileges and feel like he's serving his country. Like he himself, he was all excited. And that is wrong. He had a moment of realization that it was more important to help people than to hurt his enemies. And that was important, but that is a single moment of doing the right thing, and proper redemption requires a ton of those. It requires making that your default. Doing the right thing once does not mean you are a better person. So it's wrong that he now, has assignment and title again. Like, he should not. But the fact that he shouldn't, the fact that that's wrong is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So when I say it's wrong, I don't mean for the story. I mean on an in-universe sense of justice. Like, no! But that's perfect. Because he's the white guy who did one right thing after doing a string of wrong things. And guess what? You basically get back whatever it is you think you lost. And having it happen here, and having it feel like I felt in my gut, like, oh, this is wrong. And then I realized, oh, but it's right that this feels wrong. Yes. And also doing it without necessarily overly demonizing John Walker as a bad guy, but like he's a guy who he thinks he's owed a lot. And he thinks he's owed this second shot. He's not, but he thinks he is. So he's going to embrace it. And that makes him very open to manipulation from people like Julia Louis-Dreyfus. So that felt like a solid setup, and that worked pretty well for me too. I think that's pretty much everyone I wanted to talk about. We only had a brief touch-in with the shrink, with the therapist, which was nice. I do kind of wish he had been in the thing more overall. But this felt like a really solid wrap-up. And I think the decisions made on how to tackle and where to end everybody makes sense for the characters, makes sense for the theming. One of my big frustrations with WandaVision was I felt like the climax either undercut or ignored a lot of what the show had been doing up to that point. That is not the case here. This is properly tying off and giving resolution to the things that I was enjoying about the show. So, Captain America and the Winter Soldier. What did you think of this finale? Like I said, I'm going to think on it a bit more. I'm going to do kind of an overview review over on the Council of Geeks channel next week. But for now, what did you think about this finale? Drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. I have a Patreon. Link is down in the description because there should be a link up there, but there won't be because YouTube's busted and sucks right now. But even if you're not able to support me that way, like, share, subscribe helps me out as well. But even if you can't do that, no pressure because we take a relaxed attitude around here. So just come on back next time you need a break.